Hi Bobcats, this is Miss Lee, and we're going to continue learning about fraction decimal percent conversions. Today's video is learning how to convert decimals to fractions. Please make sure that you have your notes booklet. You're going to need to continue taking notes and working examples. If you don't have them, then please take notes and work the examples on a sheet of notebook paper, and then you can put that in your binder. Let's get started. Okay, how do we change a decimal to a fraction? We need to use the place value of the decimal number as the denominator and then simplify the fraction if necessary. Okay, place values go with decimals. Very important. You've already learned about the decimal place values, but as just kind of to refresh your memory, take a look over here at our place value chart. We have the decimal point, and when we read numbers that have parts or that have a decimal point, we say the decimal point, we read it as the word and. So we have the whole number and some part. And the place values for the decimals, the parts, are to the right of the decimal point. And the first place value is the tenths, then the hundredths, then the thousandths. Remember, there are no ones place. Ones are whole numbers, reserved for whole numbers only. So let's try an example. We're so used to reading this as 0.8 or 0.8. But when you want to write it in a fraction form, if you actually say or read the decimal value correctly, the right way, it's going to tell you what your denominator is. So if we read this, it's 0 and 8, and then you say the decimal place value. There's only one decimal, one place value, so the one decimal place value is the tenths. So we read this as 8 tenths, or 0 and 8 tenths. 8 tenths, that's how you write your fraction. The 8 is the numerator, the place value, which is the tenths, is your denominator. So there's your fraction, 8 over 10. Now, all fractions you should simplify if possible. Shouldn't even need to tell you that. That needs to become just automatic with you. So let's go ahead and simplify. They're both even, so I'm going to divide by 2. Remember, you have to divide both numerator and denominator by the same factor. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Cannot simplify further, so this is the simplified fraction 4/5. Pretty easy, right? Let's try another one. Okay, again, you want to read this using the place value. So this one has two place values. So looking at our place value chart, the two place values would put it in the hundredths place. So this would be read 24 hundredths. And you write it just like you read it. 24 and the hundredths would be your denominator. Let's go ahead and simplify. I'm going to divide both by 4. 24 divided by 4 is 6. 100 divided by 4 is 25. 6 and 25 have no common factors, so our simplified fraction is 6/25. In our next example, we have a whole number. Okay? We're still going to do the same process, except for it's going to become a mixed fraction or a mixed number. We have a whole number, and then the fraction would be your decimal part. So the whole number is 1, it's one whole. One whole, and this is 125. There are 3 decimal place values, which puts it in the thousandths place. So it's 125 thousandths. 1 and 125 thousandths. And then you have to simplify. I know that I can divide both by 5 because the numerator ends in a 5, the denominator ends in a 0. So that's going to give me 25 over 200. And if I think of this 200 as in $2, I know I can divide by 25 because I'm thinking of quarters. So 25 divided by 25 is 1. And 8 quarters make $2, so that's 1/8. And don't forget your whole number, the 1. So it's 1 and 1/8. Hopefully you recognize that 125 thousandths, that is a benchmark fraction that we've already learned about. That makes it much easier if you know those than having to go and do all of this division. But either way, whether you know it or not, you can figure it out. 1 1/8. And our last example is 3 and 5. 1 decimal place value means it is in the tenths place. 3 and 5/10. 3 is your whole number, 5 and 10 is your denominator. Simplify. You should know that 5 over 10 simplifies to 1/2, so it's 3 and 1/2. And that's all there is to it. So let's do some examples. We're going to throw it in some word problems. Okay, 0.35, or if you read it, 35/100ths of the donated books for fiction. There's 2 decimal places, so that's the hundredths place. We want to write this amount as a fraction. So we already know that our denominator is 100, so it's just 35 over 100. And simplify. I can divide both by 5, and it gives me 7/20ths, which is as simple as you can go. And let's check our answer. We are correct. So I'd like for you to go ahead and pause the video, work the next 3 examples on your own. Once you have your answers, be sure to simplify your fractions. Once you have your answers, come back and check to see how you did. Okay, let's see. For our second example, we had 2 and 625 thousandths. As a fraction, that would be 2 and 5/8. I really want you to get in the habit whenever you have 1,000 as your denominator to thinking, is it one of the eighths? Could it be one of the eighths? Because if you can start thinking about the eighths and recognize it, it sure makes it much easier than having to go through all this division, all this simplifying. Okay? If the eighths are still kind of hard for you, that's fine. The more we work with it, the more you'll get used to it. You can just divide. I did by 25. You could divide by 5, but you would have to keep dividing more and more, and that's fine, it's doable. But 2 and 5/8 is the answer. All right, the soccer team, they needed to raise $250. They just threw out extra number out there. That's not necessary, because what they're wanting us to do is to write this 400ths to decimal place values. 400ths. So simplify the fraction, it's 1 over 25. And the last one, the answer is 3/20ths. Now, if you got 7/20ths, you wrote 85/100ths in fraction form. That's how many he made. They wanted you to write how much he missed. So they're trying to trick you there. You have to go, if he made everything, it would be one whole, 100% one whole. Okay, so if he only made 85/100ths, subtract that from one whole, and that gives you 15/100ths that he missed. And that's what you're going to write in fraction form, and that's how you get the 3/20ths. Good job, Bobcats.